That is a sign.
I have definitely used our dog as an escape route of
All
when
the
I'm just
time.
tired and I want to leave.
We didn't see very many faces out there of people like us who were starting families.
That's because you're
and-
ultra cute.
Oh, well. Myth busted.
There ain't no gay man you're ever going to meet who says, oh, had a really drunken night. And I
Yeah.
know, I'm a dad.
Oh no, I can't do this.
Welcome to the Who's Your Daddy podcast, where we work to demystify the process of starting a family through non-traditional means. From foster to adoption to IVF and surrogacy, come along as we navigate this tricky space on our own journey to fatherhood. From parents who have navigated these processes before to the experts that help pave the way. Together we hope to gain insight and answer as many questions as we can. We are your hosts and husbands, Michael and Matt, and today we are talking to Gays with Kids founder, Brian Rosenberg. Gays with Kids is a one-stop learning center for gay men looking to start their foster, adoption, or surrogacy journey to fatherhood. Brian has experience in all facets of non-traditional family building and has 3 beautiful children with his husband, Bird. Hi, Brian.
Hello, guys.
How
Thank
are
you so much for
you?
having me here. I'm
Thank
awesome.
you for being here.
It's great to see you both.
I am so excited to have you on. When Michael and I first started the journey on surrogacy, we were like, what's even the first question that we ask? Who do we ask these questions to? What do we do? And I think one of our first conversations was with you
Literally.
virtually. And we're like, Brian, what do we do?
How do we do this?
So we're so honored to have you on as
Oh.
one of our first guests on the Who's Your Daddy podcast. This is very exciting because you are like one of the top experts that we know in the surrogacy, adoption, and foster care space. So I'm just so excited to learn from you and to hear kind of like for a lot of people out there who are looking to start their journeys or are thinking about the potential path to parenthood, how does one even start? Where do you even begin? So I would love to, we're going to start off first. I want to hear a little bit about you. Like where do you live right now? Where did you grow up? A little bit of your background story.
All right. I'd be happy to answer all that. But first, I have to say, I'm honored to be here. I love you guys. I love watching you guys. I love your videos. I love the visibility you give to the gays. I only wish, I live a different generation than you are. And I only wish that, you guys were around when I was starting to come out, and I wouldn't have had the message journey that I had. At any rate, so thank you. All right, so I parked my car in Harvard Yard, so if it's not very obvious where I'm from, I grew up on the North Shore. The town that I grew up in claims to be the birthplace of the American Navy, so I'll let everyone Google to figure out where I grew up. And I now live in a suburb just west of Boston, where my husband and our kids moved 6 years ago to be closer to our family. We have lived as a family in Canada and New York City.
Oh, I love that. And it's like, yeah, can you tell where you're from your accent?
That's amazing.
I lived outside of Boston. I moved away from it for 20 years. The accent
way.
Where
never
at?
left me. I lived in New York City, in Chelsea. We used to live in Ground Zero, 19th and 8th, then Hell's Kitchen, and then Toronto for 5 years while we're dealing with visa issues with my husband, which is a whole different topic. And then back to New York City. We lived in the Bronx, in Riverdale.
Wow.
I like to say the Bronx because it makes me sound tougher than I am. And then we moved here to the suburb of Boston.
Oh my gosh. So when did you first have your first kid? What year?
2009. So Bird and I were together for a long time, but so actually we're going to celebrate our 30th anniversary.
Oh my gosh.
This
Happy
year.
anniversary.
Thank you.
Yay.
So that's a good response, but it better would have been, no way, 30 years. You look like you for that. Just letting you know for the next time.
I still don't believe it.
That's amazing.
There you go.
See, I'm learning. I'm learning.
You're good. And I have been HIV positive for longer than that.
Okay.
So, like, becoming a dad was never in the cards. I never even thought it was possible or a possibility. And in fact, when I was your age, in my 20s and 30s, I probably attended some 30 funerals of guys in their 20s and 30s I remember we went to a funeral of a guy who turned 40, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, do you think we can live to be that old?"
Oh
So
my
it's a
God.
whole different
Wow.
story. And so it wasn't until the so-called cocktail effect, which was in 1995 came out. In 1996, I started taking these pills, and they worked for me. I could tell you the
Wow.
year because I was 31, and my doctor was a big muffa in the Boston area for HIV and AIDS. And so he was asked by Boston Globe they could they'd love to interview some patients who were doing well on the cocktail, and sure, of course. So I got to, and the guy said to me, "So how old are you?" And I actually answered, "I'm 30." Wonderful, because I was like finally doing well with the HIV status.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't until way after that that we started thinking about fatherhood, and we had
Yeah.
lots of nieces and nephews, loved them, and then we had a dog, and we're like, okay, we love having. We would leave parties early to go take care of the dog, or we would. Are you ready for? Are you guys sitting? We would decline brunch invitations because we want to take Duke for a walk in Central Park,
That is
and
a sign. That is a
I have
sign
definitely used our dog as an escape route of
all
like when I'm
the
just
time.
tired and I want to leave. I don't know if you can see her. She's literally right here
I
next
know
to
she's
us.
adorable.
But yeah, she loves whenever we get on a call. If we're on a chair, she's like wants to jump up on
But
our lap.
No,
If
we
we're like,
can't like be separate from
she like
her.
literally is
I
she's
know.
just
More
always
so for
here.
Michael than for me,
Yeah.
because like I can take my space from the dog at times. I'm like, okay, it's been wonderful, but I'm okay going, on a walk by myself or going
No,
out
I
to
would never go on a
dinner
walk
on
by
my
myself
own.
anymore.
Oh my God, so selfish, Matthew.
I
I
don't know that
know.
I've ever canceled brunch
We did.
That's
because we
pretty.
wanted to go on a
Yeah, that's
walk.
I
pretty
know.
serious.
And
That
So
is
you
so,
canceled
hilarious.
brunch with your dog,
so we
and you're
canceled
like,
brunch, went to Central Park for the dog. Not only our nieces and nephews, but honestly, like any of my friends who had kids, I like wanted to be with them. I loved
oh
hanging out
yeah,
with them, and I didn't care. I'd even change 30 diapers or feed them and birth them, etc. So, he's like, I honestly don't think you're gonna feel fulfilled in life. Now that we know your doctor says you're gonna be around for a while, for a long time, I don't
oh
think you'll
yeah.
be fulfilled in life unless you become a dad. And by then, I was in my mid 40s, and Ferd was in his upper 40s. And
Mm.
he said, "All right." So I got the seal of approval from my doctor, and then we started investigating different paths of fatherhood.
I just think that's incredible. Like I'm thinking about this change of perspective from the 1980s and 1990s of being HIV positive, being in an environment where you're seeing friends of yours pass away from this horrible disease, and then things starting to change around 1996 when you first started taking the cocktail of HIV medication and you started to at least see that you were going to live a lot longer than what you were expecting to or
the
what you were
the
seeing.
change from how long am I going to live to then being able to be, like then thinking about like, well, now how am I going to become
A
a father?
father.
That is quite a 180,
Yeah.
of life.
It's
That's
like a
awesome.
360. That's
It's,
crazy.
people can't imagine. I mean, those days were crazy. They were awful, but there was also a lot of wonderful stuff. I mean, we really came together as a community. Uh, People really bonded. We all lived in a gay, well, like we all lived in, the gay hoods. And everyone would really seem to be very supportive, and we all knew that everything was fragile. And we had to realize how important it was to become out and how important it was to live our authentic lives, and to be true to ourselves and not care about what others have to think about us, and to start really advocating for our community in a big way.
It's like a whole layer of appreciation on life and just gratitude of being alive and being able to celebrate who you are in pride and then growing into that being able to grow a family and share that with them. And I don't know, I find that really
So
touching.
you're in your mid 40s and you don't have gays with kids as a resource. How did you even
Oh my
start
god.
trying to figure out how you were going to build your family?
That's a great facilities. I like the way you brought it back on topic. So we were living in New York City at the time. There was an LGBT outside that used to run, I don't know if it still does, a program called Moms and Dads or Moms, whatever it was. And they had a once a month program that they would bring people to talk. And like I remember we went once with a guy who adopted a baby, someone else who had a baby through surrogacy. But it's like once a month, so we did that 2 or 3 times. It wasn't telling you how to do it though, right? Like, and then there was a conference in New Jersey. I remember an adoption conference. We found out about it, and I said to my husband, Bert, "Oh, we should go. Look at there's a session on." Literally, the title was, "You think you're too old to parent?" And I'm like,
wow.
That's us, like, because that was my concern. So we went back. That room was packed. It was SRO, and I was the youngest person in the room
No
by
way.
far. My husband was the second youngest person in the room by
no
far.
way.
So like, okay, we're not too old to parent.
It's never too late.
No.
It's never too late. And so then, honestly, I don't know how we figured it out. I tend to when it's part of my life, like I can't tell you what it's like to parent three babies under the age of 2. I did it for several years, but
Oh my
I
God.
forget about it. When it's done.
Compartmentalize that.
Yeah. So I can't tell you all. What I can tell you is that we decided to go through adoption for a whole bunch of reasons, but that was just the decision we came up with. And we had a wonderful adoption agency, and they connected us with a woman who had a baby. She was she really wasn't a woman. She was a teenager, and she was living with her teenage boyfriend who was not the bio dad of the baby, and he didn't want to be a dad. But and so she wanted to stay with him, so it agreed to give her baby up for adoption. And so we got to meet them. We met him a couple of times, and I actually got to hold the baby. And I got to hold him and feed him, and I fell instantly in love with him, as honestly I do with any baby I hold.
Yeah.
And then she said, "He's yours." And so we're like, "Oh my God!"
How old were the parents?
So like 17.
Yeah, teenagers.
And he might have even been 16, honestly, but I think he was 7. But she did have a couple of caveats. Like she wanted a couple of, I would call them red flags. And our adoption agency even told us, they didn't call it red flags. They even said, it's unusual. Like she wanted to hold on to the baby for another month and a half. She wanted to personally take him to his 6 month, called the get well visit to the doctors, just to make sure everything is fine. And then she said she wanted to hand him off after she knew she had done him well for the first 6 months. So that was a little bit strange.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then she also wanted us to keep the name she had given him, which we said fine with as well. So had I had a resource to go back, and again, our adoption agency said it was strange, but I held him, and I fell in love with him. And so I was willing, we were like, yeah, whenever you do whatever you need to do for you, we'll be here. And, he ended up after about a month and a half, and we spent money at attorneys and social workers, et cetera. She ended up deciding that she really wanted the baby. And you know what? That was totally her right. Totally her right to do. And she left the boyfriend, and we had no way to connect with her afterwards. So we realized we weren't going to become dads with this baby. And so we said, well, we're not getting any younger. Let's look into other options. And my husband found out about surrogacy, but we knew I was HIV positive. And so then he did research and found out that there's this wonderful lab called the Bedford Research Laboratory in Massachusetts, Dr. Ann Keesley, who had been working with almost, I think at that point, I don't know if only straight couples, but if they'd worked with any gay guys, it was very few. I think I was one of the first gay guys that they worked with, where it was all straight men who were HIV positive, who were with straight women who were not, and they were able to have, through Dr. Keating's help at Bedford Research Lab, they were able to have HIV negative babies, and the women never seroconverted. Basically, they're able to do some testing with your semen to see if you're going to be a carrier, and if not, they can wash off any risk there. So
that's pretty incredible.
It was pretty incredible. So we figured all that part out. Then we signed a contract with a surrogacy agency that they had recommended because they had worked with, because there were not a lot of surrogacy agencies or IVF clinics those days were very comfortable with HIV positive gay men, let alone HIV positive men. And 3 days later, our phone rang from the adoption agency to tell us that a baby boy had been born in Brooklyn and that we need to prepare to pick him up 2 days later.
Oh my God.
Okay. Wow.
So, yeah.
Oh my God. And it's like, okay, we already got the process of surrogacy rolling, and now we are, surprise, adopting a child.
Yes,
in a
newborn
couple days.
baby. And I remember, so we went to Bye Bye Baby, this store, and big store. They have a location in
Mhm.
Chelsea. I'm like, okay, guys, this is going to sound crazy, but we're bringing home a baby tomorrow, and we have nothing and know nothing. And yeah, I could see the king signs going up.
Yeah.
And so they took us around, and we spent way too much money and bought way too much stuff. And I want to come back to that in a second. But I remember as we were walking around, half the stuff, more than half, like 75% of the stuff, I kid you not, has labels on. And the labels said things like, mommy tested, mommy approved,
Mm.
or baby from mommy, mom made with love from mom. And I, as nervous as I was that we were bringing this newborn home the next day, I remember looking at Bert saying, we're not supposed to buy this stuff.
Right.
So epiphany number one I had before I even became a dad was that the parenting world certainly thinks that mom is solely responsible for raising children.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's better today. It's better today. Is it perfect? Is it,
Getting
no.
better.
They
Yeah.
could still make changes, but it's better.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna keep an eye out next time we're at a store. I mean, like, we're not frequenting baby stores at this point, but we have stepped in to a few.
Yeah,
We
well,
actually
yeah,
have a
out of
Bye Bye Baby
curiosity.
right
Yeah.
down the street.
Do you
And we
really?
did.
Yes,
Go
And
in
we-
there and you
we
tell
did-
them the story I just shared with you.
I will.
We did buy some baby outfits from Bye Bye Baby. Do we have a baby right now? No. Do we
No.
have baby outfits?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I will tell you that for anyone who's listening who is like pregnant or has a baby is my adoption attorney. We freaked out and we're like, we have nothing. We can't take a baby. And I was like, Brian, calm down. All you really need is a suitcase or a drawer. I kid you not. Meaning you can make a very comfortable bed out of a suitcase or a drawer. So
Oh my God.
when I
Wow.
launched Gays with Kids, the very first blog post written by me, and the title of that is all you really need is a suitcase or a drawer. Because it turns out that was totally true. It was the best advice I ignored.
My mom's dad, so my paternal grandpa,
Yeah.
was like 2 pounds or something when he was born, and I think slept in a drawer in the dresser like for multiple months when he was first born. So that's actually pretty funny because they'd always talk about that, like, oh yeah, Grandpa Cooley
To the drawer.
like slept in a drawer, like they just opened the drawer and like made it comfy for him.
Right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This is also kind of insane to me. The thought of like you guys deciding, okay, let's start a family, and then you're going down the path of adoption. It's not working well. You're thinking, let's pivot to surrogacy. Let's try that out. And as soon as you go there and start taking the steps, adoption comes knocking at your door and it's like, hello, it's time to have a baby. And it's kind of like this thing where you go from we don't have any kids and we don't know if we'll ever have a family to now we are going to at least have 2 kids.
Yeah.
So
Can I ask kind of a silly question? I mean, maybe it's not, but like, I know with friends of ours who have done foster, right? They like call you and they're like, hey, we need help with this child.
Correct.
But they might be like leaving or going out of town and they're like, oh, sorry, like call the next person. Was that an option? I mean, I'm assuming that was an option of like, hey, you're first in line for this child being born in 2 days. But like you could have said, hey, we're actually doing surrogacy right now.
Right.
But you were like, nope, bring
No,
him up.
what? So actually, the baby, Levi, was 3 days old when we got the call, but he was already born.
Oh.
Yes, and we didn't have to, but if you need help, of course we're
Right.
going to
Oh,
take them,
absolutely.
right? Yeah, no, I know, and I know you weren't implying that, but so yeah, of course. When we, as I said, we had just signed with a surrogacy agency, and that came with a pretty hefty deposit, non-refundable deposit, as you guys know.
Yes. Yes.
And so we're like, okay, so what do we do now? So we said, well, we'll just slow down the surrogacy process. Now, a lot has changed, and I think I talked about this with you guys when we first spoke. A lot has changed in medicine and science and technological innovations from when I was going through, my husband and I went through our surrogacy journey from when you guys were starting. And so back in the days when we were doing this, so the girls are now 12. I should say Levi's going to be 14 in a few weeks, and as big as I am. And the girls are 12. There weren't, what every doctor said, you want to implant 2 embryos. And we know a lot of people implanted 3 or more. And what they said was that the chances of having a healthy singleton, one child born when you implanted 2 embryos, went up. I'm going to get this totally wrong. It just went up significantly.
Right. Okay.
Yes, the chances of having twins also went up, but not nearly at that same level.
Interesting.
So my friends used to joke, my female friends, I used to joke, oh, I bet you're going to get twin girls. And that's what we got, twin girls.
So you implanted how many embryos?
So we implanted 2 embryos.
Okay, and both took.
And so I would like to add also, just for the HIV positive listeners, it turned out my husband's little spermy guys didn't swim so well. So the bio dad is the HIV positive guy. Now, as you guys will both realize, when you become, it's no one's business at all. And I literally only share that because I like to let HIV positive people know that they can become bio dads if they want to.
That's awesome. I wonder if there are people out there who didn't realize that. I wonder how, you know what I mean? Like, it's, you would think maybe we're so far beyond, but I think that if somebody tested, then maybe they just immediately are like, oh wow, this is
I can never
be a
become
problem.
a dad. Yeah.
So I love that little piece
Myth
of information.
busted.
Yeah, that's amazing. Myth busted.
Yay, science. So 3 kids below the age of 2, all at the same time.
Wait, so you didn't
lot.
really slow down the surrogacy
I guess we didn't
then.
really slow down the surrogacy.
So how long after you adopted Levi then did you do the embryo transfer?
So I can't answer that. I would have to do the math. I can tell you that
math.
the girls were born 17 months later. And
wow.
Let me throw another complication into the equation for you guys.
Yeah.
So again, this wouldn't happen today. Because today, thankfully, we have marriage equality. But Ferd, my husband, is Dutch. And up until, when Levi was born in 2009, I couldn't sponsor him. And he was here originally for school. He was getting his PhD. And then he got a series of temporary visas teaching. But never any that would sponsor him for immigration. And at that point, like, Massachusetts allowed gay marriage. I forget the handful of states that allowed gay marriage. But even though we lived in Massachusetts, I couldn't sponsor him for immigration because when you get married, I don't know if you know this, but you get married at the statewide level, you get a host of benefits, but it's not that many. Most of the marriage benefits actually kick in at the federal level. So until the federal government approved of our marriages, I couldn't give, even if Ferd and I got married, I couldn't give him the benefits that were offered. And so it turned out for like a few years before Levi was born, Ferd spent most of the time doing this research. And I tell you, it was complicated as heck. It was very, very challenging because there were no resources to go to. It was picking up the phone. It was going to offices. It was not fun.
It's a lot of time investment.
It was a lot of time. And going online to figure out what we could find out. But there was like almost, there's very little period. There was nothing for kids. I mean, nothing. At any rate, so Ferd spent full time doing that. And after Levi was born, because he was European, he could come for 3 months as a tourist. And then he'd have to leave, get his passport stamped, and they could come back in. And so he did that for like 3 or 4 years.
Jeez.
And then after Levi was born, he had to leave the country. When he came back in, immigration officer said, I see what you've been doing for the last several years. This is it. The next time you leave, do not try to come back because I'm going to make a note in the system. You're not allowed back. So now we had to figure out, oh my God, where do we live? Do we let Ferd stay? Do we stay in the States and Ferd goes into out of status, meaning he's illegal?
Oh my God.
And so we said, no. Ferd didn't want to move to Holland. And it turns out Canada recognized us. So we actually, after Levi was about 5 months old, we got a visa to live in Canada. And so we lived there for the next
What?
5 years. So the girls were born in West Virginia, but we were Canadians living on a,
Jeez.
and it gets even better than that. So I found like the only attorney, a gay guy, who had worked with another couple where one was HIV positive and one was not, who wanted to emigrate. As you can imagine, countries were not too excited about having HIV positive people emigrate to them because they could become a burden on their society, on their medical system. So we had to prove that I wouldn't. And on the day our 2-year visa expired, we were there for 2 years. At 5 o'clock, we hadn't heard that I got legal status, like we were all going to get green cards. At 6 o'clock, found out that we got green cards. Literally on the day our 2-year visa expired. So, anyways, that was a whole.
Holy crap.
That is
So it's like,
a stress monster.
yeah. And thinking about it, I'm so grateful that we're doing this now 13, 14 years later because, I mean, well, we wouldn't have the issue, but
We're both U.S. citizens.
we're both
so
U.S. citizens.
We're
Right.
But
spoiled that way.
things that have changed, it's like, okay, now as a gay married couple, you can get the K1 visa for your
Right.
partner coming overseas or international. And then additionally, like surrogacy agencies are way more apt to work with LGBTQ couples. That wasn't so much a thing in 2009 and before, lesser known. And then I don't know, just overall, there's less discrimination now in the U.S. when it comes to surrogacy for LGBTQ couples. There's still a
Yep.
lot there, but we've come a long way in 10, 14 years. So
Yeah.
So I would ask, what inspired you to start Gays with
Yeah, oh
Kids?
my
But
God.
I
Oh.
feel like we just like spent 20 minutes
fact, yeah.
about how difficult this whole process has
It
been
was.
and how
It's
difficult
true.
it was with zero resources, weird laws and visas, and that's just I mean I think we sort of explained it, but if you, I mean I would love to hear sort of like how you decided or when you decided like, okay, I have enough info to help people do this, and I'm going to invest probably an inordinate amount of time in creating this website with these resources. So,
Yes, after I became dad, I told you about Epiphany 1 that, I realized, and that, by the way, that continued, right? First pediatrician visit, we found a daycare place for Levi. Like, they all had questions, like, where's mom? And so then
wow.
that also, and then we would walk around, right? We had a stroller, a double carrier, and a single one, and a chihuahua. So I'm sure we looked like the circus sideshow, right? And so wherever we went, people wanted to know stuff. And I was like, oh my God. And I just like, we're the dads. We're the gay dads who don't ask me questions. Get what it took to get here. I need to connect with them. But there were very few gay dads. Back in those days, there were not a lot of gay dads. Again, people in my generation, sadly,
Right.
too many of them passed away. And then others, like, this was just never an option. And then they felt like they thought of being able to do it. So I really wanted to be able to share my story and to connect with other gay dads. But we had 3 little ones at home. So it wasn't until they were all out of diapers and eating solid foods and Levi was in pre-K or whatever, that I'm like, okay, let's check out. There's got to be something going on now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we're living in Toronto. There's nothing IRL. And there was really nothing going on online either. So I'm like, you know what? Let's just launch it. I convinced my husband. We came up with the name Gays with Kids. And we just launched it. And I started, like, my thought was, what we'll do is we'll just share stories. And we'll share accurate and honest portrayals of what it takes for us to become family. And then what life is like once we are. And so over the years, I reached out to people that I saw were blogging or had really great social media posts and to get them to write for us. And actually, a couple of them, David Blacker, still to this day, writes like almost once a month for us.
Oh my
Awesome.
God.
He's now a therapist. So I feel like
Nice.
he's giving us free therapy for the last 9 years. But we just shared stories. And over the years, we probably have shared hundreds and hundreds, like into the thousands stories, whether it's our website or social media. And
Did this start as like a group on Facebook, like a group of dads and
no,
LGBTQ parents, or was it the website?
it was the website, and then we launched on Facebook, and we launched on Instagram. I'll tell you a funny story about Instagram in a second. So we just launched it and on YouTube.
Can't
and
imagine
Twitter.
a funny story from
I
Instagram.
know. You're not, no, this
No
is
way.
You guys already think I'm old. Wait till you hear this story.
Oh God.
So whatever.
I don't think you're old. I don't believe it.
So we were bobbing around, and actually we had a nanny for, as you can imagine, with 3 little ones. We need help, and we were living in Toronto, so no family for me and no family for her. So we had a nanny, and she was wonderful. But we actually wanted her to move in with us, and she didn't want. She was living with her boyfriend at the time. I'm like, who knows how that's going to go? Leave him. Come hang out with us. It's like, no. Today they're married and they have 2 beautiful children of their own.
Nice.
And it's Rosalind who. So she said to me, "But Brian, let me help you out with games with kids." Like literally, day 3 or something. So I'm like,
God,
okay. And a couple of months into it, she says to me, "You're on Facebook and you're on YouTube and even on Twitter, but you don't have Instagram." So I said, "Rosalind, I don't understand this whole Instagram thing. I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't get it. I don't think anyone wants it. But if you want to start us on Instagram and you go for it. I think you're a little crazy, but you go for it."
This sounds exactly like
What year?
Yeah.
Do you
So
even know?
we're 9 years ago. So we just saw right now, 2014.
This sounds exactly like, what I thought about when Vine first came out, which was like 2013, 2014.
2014 Instagram was not even remotely close to what it is today.
Oh no.
There were no photo editing apps. It was like everything was in Instagram, and you had like the 9 filters. Everything was square.
I would argue to say that it was still cool.
I don't even think there was a video. I don't even think you could upload videos. It was strictly
no video.
Square photos.
I felt so hip and underground using my Valencia filter.
XX Pro.
Oh my God, I love XX Pro.
Or whatever it's called.
You guys, know you're
Anyways.
talking a language I don't understand right now. Just so you
Yeah,
both know
It's
that.
just,
Okay.
well, Instagram used to be just photos, no
Right, that I knew.
stories, right? So that there was no stories, there was no reels. I don't even think there was a
You'd have to take
square
the photo
video
in
option.
app. You'd have to take the photo in app. It's much more like if you've ever used Be Real at all. At this,
Oh, my kids do Be Real. I try to get in it whenever I can, but they don't usually want.
So
Yes, I
anyways,
love
you saying I don't think Instagram is gonna go anywhere. In 2009, honestly, thinking that you would need some sort of business presence on Instagram
It
probably
didn't
was
exist in 2009.
that was actually
Michael.
probably quite normal.
2013, 2014.
Sorry,
Wait,
did I say
what?
2009?
Oh, sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
2014,
I'm
yeah.
going backwards into our conversation. Something in 2009 happened. 2013.
Levi.
That was
Sorry.
like
Levi was
MySpace,
born, yeah.
Facebook day.
Yeah, sorry. Oh my gosh. It
No,
doesn't
that's
seem
fine.
like that long ago, but lots
No,
happened.
I got you.
Thank you for
Got
keeping me
you.
on track.
Well, you guys are a couple, see? The
Balance.
yin and yang.
Oh,
yeah.
He balances me. That's it.
And remind me, have you dipped your toes into the foster
So not foster.
system or no?
No.
Okay.
So, all right. So let me say, but so over the years, we told hundreds, not thousands of stories. And all that time, people would leave messages on social media or send emails and say, "Thank you so much. You've inspired us. You've inspired me. You've inspired me. Thank you, thank you, thank you." And I don't make it downplay that because that always meant a lot, especially I hadn't figured out how to generate revenue. So, and then about a year, probably like 2 years ago now, maybe even a little bit more, honestly, someone approached me on Facebook and we were messaging. He's like, "Do you mind if we do a video chat?" Kind of weird. Sure. So I was like, "Hi." And he said to me, "I just want to tell you to your face, thank you. You don't know how much you've inspired me. And if you've inspired me, I can promise you've inspired countless others." I got a little verklempt. I said, "Thank you," as I always did. And then because I was talking to him and seeing him, I said to him, "So tell me, what are you going to do next?" And he thought for a second, and he literally shrugged his shoulders. I saw him look up to the sky for answers, and he said, "I have no idea. I guess I'll have to wing it." And then I had one of those other epiphanies, knock me on the head, light bulb goes off. I'm like, oh my God. And I don't mean to downplay the importance of inspiring the next generation of gay and queer dads. And I know we've also helped change a lot of hearts and minds out there. But I hadn't helped anyone become a dad. I hadn't told them how to do it. I didn't even really do a good job sharing my own experience. And so that became the brainstorm that turned into GWK Academy, and which I hope becomes known as the very first stop in any gay or queer menstruated father, because I want to help everyone become a dad. And the first thing we do is make sure you understand all your options. So I'm sorry, Michael, this is a long-winded answer to your question. So as we began to build GWK Academy, I had already known about the fosters. We had shared stories of people. In fact, I had a really great writer, Jason, who shared his whole foster adopt journey, his husband. And so I was pretty intimate with it, although I hadn't gone through it myself. But I really became very familiar with it. And honestly, the more I learned, the more my heart went out. I realized I found out that there are over 400,000 kids in the U.S. foster care system alone, and that the purpose of the foster care system is that to reunite the children with some member of their birth family. It could be parents, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a cousin twice removed. But there are many instances in which there's no birth family to be reunited with. And so when that happens, the kid is called free for adoption. And at any given time, there are 25%, actually it's more than that, of the total number of kids in the foster care system have been freed for adoption. What does that mean? That means today there are, if there are 40,000 kids, there are over 100,000 kids. It's actually 125,000 children who are just waiting for a forever family. And as bad as they all have, and I can tell you, most of those kids go through some level of neglect and abuse, etc., or they wouldn't be in the system. And while no one wants to live in the foster care system, the kids who really get abused, it's bad enough that they don't have loving parents or family members, but they really get abused in the system of the LGBTQ plus kids. I just want to make sure, I think there are a lot more lesbians that are involved in foster systems than there are gay men. And so I just want to make sure that everybody knows all your options. You can become a biological dad regardless of your HIV status. You can adopt a newborn baby domestically. You can adopt a baby, it won't be a newborn, but you can adopt a toddler or a child internationally in 2 countries currently that allow out and proud gay men to do that, regardless of whether you're single or not. Or you can adopt a kid from the foster care system. None of them are easy journeys. I will tell you that right now. You guys should know right now. Like, there's a lot of preparation. They all come with their own complications. Yeah. And you know what? On some level, I kind of feel like I wish straight people had to prepare as much to become parents. I don't care what path they go, but I wish they had to prepare. Well, we all have to go through, right? Like, there ain't no gay man you're ever going to meet who says, oh, had a really drunken night. And I know I'm a dad. Like, it just doesn't happen.
It was unplanned. Like, we didn't, it just happened. Yeah.
Crazy prom night,
Yep. We've been planning this for 3 years.
For an unplanned prom night more in my life. If I could just oh my God. See, that's the funny thing is that would be devastating, life-changing at the time if I was in high school and had
and now a child 10, 15 years later,
and I'm like, why? No, this would.
But Matthew, you could be doing kids with me now because you'd be an expert already. You have a 20-year-old. You could be talking about planning your kid's marriage.
If I had a 20-year-old, they would. I think I'd be one of those parents where they would mistake us as siblings, and I'm like, oh no, I can't do this.
I want to just touch on one thing. So you were saying that there are only 2 countries that allow openly gay men to adopt internationally from. Which 2 are those?
Colombia and South Africa.
Oh, that's it.
God.
That's it.
Wow. Nowhere else in the world can you say, I would like to adopt a child internationally.
Nowhere else in the world can you be an out and proud gay man that I would like to adopt. Now, so if you want to talk international adoption, so those countries, before they're going to let someone from another country adopt, they also try to find someone from the birth family.
Right.
They find someone from the birth family, they try to find someone intercountry, from another citizen of their nation. But can't find that, then they open up these kids to international adoption. So who do you think these kids are? These are not the healthy kids that the countries are giving up. Most of them
course.
have some kind of, so like I think in South Africa, a lot of kids have HIV. And, they have learning disabilities. In Colombia, they have a lot of other issues. Otherwise, they would have more likely been adopted.
All kids of deserving a home, but at the same time,
Right.
like, it just goes to show you that things have changed a lot in the adoption sphere over the past 10, 20 years. And I think something that we've heard a lot of when we tell people, oh, we want to have kids, people a lot of the time jump to the idea of, oh, you should adopt somebody from another country. Something that a lot of couples did in the, I think, 80s and 90s and early 2000s.
Right.
However, where things stand now, that's not really a possibility, and especially for gay couples, for out and proud LGBTQ couples, that's not an option.
Well, anecdotally,
and for individual, like single straight individuals, it sounds like too. They have to be
It depends. Each country.
Can
But
depend on
I
country.
want to respond to something that you just said, Matthew. Ain't no one got any business telling you what to do and how to create your family.
Totally.
Yes.
Loving, it's all about, like, you want to create a family, you do what's best for you, what's right for you. My goal, my job, as far as I'm concerned, is making sure you are educated and that you understand the nuances or the individual challenges between each path. And that's what we try to do at GWK Academy. But please don't listen to a single person if they try to tell you which path to follow you should do that's best for you. You guys know that. That's a decision you make together.
Right. They're all valid. They're all amazing
Correct.
paths to family building. And the important part is that the kids grow up in a home where they have loving parents.
That's a good
loving
pivot
family.
point, though, because I want to ask, like, kind of what it's like trying to make that decision between these different paths. They all bring their own difficulties, and they're all so fulfilling and accomplishing this dream of starting a family, but they're so different. And so when you're thinking about surrogacy adoption, foster to adopt, or just foster care in general, how do you go about, like, making that decision of which one am I going to do first?
Well, and
what
how
am I gonna
long?
go for?
I was going to add too. I was curious how long you had maybe gone through the adoption process before you were like, "Gosh, this just doesn't really seem like it's working out for us." Like, how long had that been before it was like, "Well, we don't want to wait forever and keep going through these heartbreaks of like, oh, maybe we'll have the baby or maybe they'll take them back." And then I think that happens to a lot of people who maybe start there. Is they're like, well, this is harder than I thought.
I think that's just where we got stuck on too. Like, when we were thinking about starting a family, is like, what do we do first and where do we start and how do we make that decision, that first decision?
And so that's why I would really encourage your gay and queer men audience listening, check out GWK Academy. It's an app. You can download it for free. And you can create an account and enter the Intro to GWK Academy course for free. And that's where we go through the different paths to fatherhood. At a very high level, I can tell you this. Surrogacy and IVF or adoption, coincidentally, will both take about 2 years today. And today's guide, if you are just starting your journey, and that's what I told you guys back when we spoke,
right?
It's going to take you about 2 years. A surrogacy journey is going to cost about today, it's anywhere between $150,000 to $225,000. And I know that's a big gap, but it's based on a bunch of variables, some of which you control, some of which you don't. So that's why I like to say that gap. An adoption journey today, if you want to do a private domestic infant adoption, so you want to adopt a baby and newborn like we did, it's going to cost you somewhere between $35,000 to $55,000. And so, honestly, that alone, the cost is going to drive which path a lot of people will go in. And then the other thing is what's in your heart. Like, what is right to you? What does, a lot of people want to become biological connected to parents. And I know that, and I get that. I can tell you this, as a dad to an adopted son and to the bio dad to twin girls, I could not possibly love Levi any more than I do. and I couldn't possibly love the girls anymore than I do right now. Like,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I can't, I could never make the choice. Like, I would jump in front of a bus for all three of my kids. My husband's not biologically connected to any of them. He couldn't love any of them more or less. Like, he loves them all equally the same. So that's not good. But that being, so you won't love one more than the other. But I totally
Mm-hmm.
get that people want to have needs. They want to pass it down. And that totally makes sense. That's what most of us do, right? Like, I get that. And then other people, if it's in your heart, you really want to adopt, that's fantastic. I will tell you, I hate when people say, "Oh, you're so good. You know, you've given this baby a family." No, yes, we did, but he gave us a family. Like, without Levi, we
Yeah.
didn't have a family. And then,
Changing the perspective of we're
yes,
not saving anyone. We're
no,
not we're not, that's kind of savior complex outlook of
correct,
like I'm making a difference. I'm changing the world
correct,
by adopting this child, and that can be a very problematic view to go into adoption with. So kind of like
correct,
examining your bias on adoption even before you start the process and see like
It's
exactly,
not nobody, yeah, and nobody wants to feel, yeah, you don't want that sort of identity of like, oh, I'm indebted to my parents because they, that's
no,
not
but
how you want to enter. Like, oh, I have a house, so I need to save someone. I would like to grow a family. I would like to, if there's somebody out there that I can give a home to, and they can, like you were saying, reciprocate and give me a family, and we can give them a home, and we can become a family together. Like, that's
yeah,
the important part. But I think a lot of people
right,
think like, yeah, like, oh, we need to go, save them, and you need, you're the savior. And
yeah,
it's kind of it's a weird situation to have to be put into, right? Of like the fact that there are kids out there with no homes, and that's just how our society is,
right,
unfortunately. Like,
which I think again is like how a lot of adoption was framed years ago when a lot of people were adopting from other countries and things like that. And that was kind of like I remember seeing advertisements, on TV and on
yeah,
billboards and stuff of like adopt a child, and it'd be this very, very sad child looking at you with these big doughy eyes, and that's just
no,
I don't
you,
know,
yeah,
remnants of
absolutely. You really have to do a lot of research and a lot of preparation. A couple of things about that. You have to do a lot of preparation. So whether you want to do those things, or you want to help in the foster care system, you want to become a parent, foster, adopt. I will, by the way, tell you the quickest way to parenthood is foster adopt. The least
mhm,
expensive way is foster adopt because foster adopt doesn't cost money. You might have to, front some legal fees, etc., but often you can even get those reimbursed. The only money that you really have to spend is like there's a bedroom and clothes, etc.
right.
So, but these kids come, they're in the system, so they've experienced some form of neglect and/or abuse, and so it takes real special people to be able to parent those kids. And you have to be trained. You have to constantly go through training. I can tell you many, many, many wonderful, wonderful stories of dads who opened up their homes to these children. And the kids, when they met them, the doctor said, oh, they were only going to go this far. They're only get this. And they've all done so much better. They're all flourishing because they've got loving, supportive families. So whatever journey makes sense to you, just be fully informed about what you're into, what you're up for, what you're going to get yourself into, and just be totally prepared. And it's a decision you'll make. If you're single, you'll make it probably with your family. If you're a couple, you'll make it with each other, maybe family or friends. But it's a very personal thing, and they're all wonderful options to consider.
I think that's important too, is a lot of sentiment that has been kind of, you know put towards us, or our way, from that we've been hearing, is, about the foster care system. And we have friends and family who have both done it. And I think that it also takes somebody who has enough time, right? Because, like you were saying, abuse and neglect, like, that kid needs a lot of personal attention. And if you can't give it to them because you're super busy, you're working, you're traveling, then now you're having to bring somebody in to do that, or you're putting it out onto um, the school or therapists to try and, like,
Correct.
kind of make that kid feel safe and correct any potential behaviors. And maybe that kid is perfect and that's fine too, but you never know. And I think a lot of the placements that we've seen with our friends and family, like there are a lot of different variables and different things that they've had to kind of like react to. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy.
Correct.
So
Yeah,
and you have to have that time, you have to have that energy.
It can definitely be a mixed bag whether or not you're going in whichever path that you choose to parenthood. We can talk about averages or what it usually takes, but there are always, and I think especially for this field, there are lots of exceptions. It is all over the place as far as cost goes or timeline and all of those factors, because it could be like one thing and then it could be a completely different thing, and you're just like, why did I go down this path?
And you can have biological kids. One of our daughters has autism, and
Correct,
some other issues. So, and you know what? That happens to you. You'll deal with it, and you'll do the best you can to give her the best life she can have. Right? And that's what we're doing. So, yeah. But there's one other point I did want to make though, that I think is.
And then I have one other point that I want to ask you. So go.
Oh, all right. All right. So the major, you guys are awesome. What's really, really important is your family building partner. And so I talk about whether it's a surrogacy agency, your IVF clinic, a doctor, your adoption agency, your foster care agency, your attorney that you use. It's critically important. And as you guys mentioned already, it's changed a lot in the surrogacy and IVF space. Everyone wants the gay dollar. It's important that you work with clinics and with doctors that have been doing this for a long time. And doing this, I don't just mean field of surrogacy and IVF. I'm specifically working in third-party reproduction, which, as you guys know, is what they refer to when you're talking about a gay surrogacy journey, because we need a third party, right? The egg donor, we need another third party to carry the baby, surrogate. So there are a lot more out there. In terms of adoption, I think people often or foster care, I think people make the mistake of just going to the agency closest to them, and they don't do the research. And if it's not a religious-based agency, then they have to take them, even if they don't really want to because they're gay. And I've talked to several different couples who've been lingering, 2 in foster and 1 adoption, and for a long time, because they didn't do their research. And it turns out neither of these agencies is LGBTQ friendly. How do I know it? Because whether it's a surrogacy agency, an IVF clinic, an adoption or a reproduction attorney or an adoption attorney or an adoption agency or foster agency, if they ain't shouting it from the rooftops that they love LGBTQ plus family building, then you turn around and you walk away from them. And by shouting from the rooftops, I mean on their websites, on the social media platforms. You've got to see us, and you've got to see our families, and you've got to see content written for us to help us.
I mean, that's a really good point, and it's not clicking. It didn't click for me until just now, but because the LGBTQ plus population is growing so rapidly, and we're all starting to make these decisions of having kids. Of course, these agencies are going to want that money, that dollar of the LGBTQ plus community.
Yay, capitalism.
So if they are not advertising it on their websites and elsewhere, of course they do not want anything to do with the LGBTQ plus community then, because if they want the money, they're going to put it on their website. That's they have to make that statement.
And
that
you kind of read my mind, because that was one thing that I was going to ask is,
how do you vet?
How do you vet those agencies and clinics? What's that process like?
So you don't get stuck in a hole.
Yeah.
So the great question is, how do GWK Academy specifically vet family building partners? So I lump anyone that's helping us. I like to consider us to be someone's very first family building partner. And then from there, though, we work with what I like to call an exclusive network of surrogacy and IVF family building partners. Today, there are many that have lots of expertise in third-party reproduction and are, quite frankly, are very passionate about it as well. I only work with a few because I need them for content. So on GWK Academy's surrogacy and IVF course, they help provide all the content. and we host webinars. And then I want to make sure that anyone I'm referring to, if someone enrolls in GWK surrogacy course, I'm referring them to one of our family building partners. I just want to know that these guys are awesome. So we've done a lot of work on them. They came up early on. The way our first round of family building partners came up was, I told you we sold hundreds and hundreds and thousands of stories. The first ones when I came up with this concept, the first ones I approached are the ones that came up in our stories all the time. And then we did our research, and we went make sure they're shouting from the rooftops. We asked dads who've used them, and so really did our research. That's how we found the surrogacy and IVF partners. So my goal is that ultimately we build up a network, a national network, and actually I wanted to Canada too, so a North American network of agencies for every single state and province in Canada. For now, we've got about 14 or 15, and again, just because they came up in our stories. And so we began to build relationships with them. And we know a bunch of dads who have used them and have all had great experiences with them. There are several other achievements that, like if they've been HRC certified, we'll take a look at that. Maybe Family Equality Council has a host of programs as well to get people competent with working with the LGBTQ community. So we'll look at those things. We have like a host of different ways. So if you're in adoption or foster care, please, definitely use us to make sure you're working with the right agency. Surrogacy and IVF, I stand very, very strongly behind all of our family building partners. And I would love you to at least talk to them. All of our family building partners in surrogacy and IVF do offer discounts to people enrolling us. But I just feel, and I like to be transparent too, I actually do get paid from the surrogacy and IVF family building partners. And I tell everybody that. That being said, I stand firmly behind what I said. We fed them. We know they're awesome. Either the founders or the head folks that we talk to are really share my passion to help you guys become dads. And that's how we do it. So, but our network, we will never have in the surrogacy and IVF, it's huge encompassing. It'll always be an exclusive smaller group. And like I said, looking to build out adoption foster agencies in every state.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about kind of like the journey of kind of like what you've brought to the table of going from this place of just not knowing if you'd ever have the chance of building a family and being in that, that post HIV sphere, and then
helping hundreds and hundreds of people build families.
Thousands.
Thousands.
I really enjoyed hearing about the start of GWK. It was founded in a way to tell the stories of LGBTQ plus couples, people who are starting families in non-traditional ways, and being able to share those stories and inspire others. And I think that's so important, because when you think about when I think about us 5 years, 10 years back, thinking about how we're gonna maybe start a family one day, there's so many questions out there. There's not a lot of answers. And then there's also not a lot of inspiration. We didn't see very many faces out there of people like us who were starting families.
That's because you're ultra cute.
Oh, well. Oh, God. Besides that, we didn't see very many gay couples out there having kids. And so I think like a big thing is to help change that narrative of like, look, there are a lot of LGBTQ plus couples out there who are having kids and that do have families. And let's look at those stories and share those stories and be able to inspire others who also want that. And not only, you started there, but then moving on to not only are we inspiring other people, but also there's a lot of questions out there and we don't know how to freaking do this. There's so many options and there's no information out there. So let's try to figure out how we can organize that information and make it more accessible for other people. And that's what we're doing. We're still moving in that direction. We're not there yet. It's still complicated. There's still a lot of issues with these systems, and we need to continue the discussion and figure out how we can make these systems better and more accessible for all LGBTQ plus couples everywhere and people who struggle with infertility issues. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this expertise and answering the question of where do you start when thinking about starting a family, because that's a big question.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we come back and have more questions for you in the future.
Yeah,
But-
because there's already like 7 things that you mentioned that I'm like, oh my God, I would love to dive into that.
You know, I would be more than happy. You just tell me when. I'm here.
Well, I think we have to get you back to your husband, but
All
thank
right.
you so much for joining us on the Who's Your Daddy podcast, and we can't wait to talk to you again.
All right,
Brian
thank you
Rosenberg,
guys.
everybody.
It was great to
Thank
be here.
you.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, what did you think?
That was incredible.
So Brian contacted us, and we talked to Brian at the beginning of this journey, and he is actually, we used a partner IVF clinic and a partner agency with Gays with Kids, but he was more offering information to us. We didn't get to actually ask him that many questions about his journey.
Right, I know.
That's
So it's
crazy to hear.
pretty incredible to like hear where he comes from and how he actually came to become a father. Yeah, wasn't expecting all that. So
No, and I remember
Processing.
what was it? The last episode or the one before where we were talking about what we're most excited about, and I was most excited to talk to people and talk to guests that we're going to have on the podcast and listen to their stories, because it's so interesting. And even just talking to him and comparing that to like multiple people that we've not talked to yet on the podcast, but are going to in the future, because we know their stories. It's just so interesting, like how different everybody's family building story is. I think it's so cool.
Yeah, that is the grain of salt to take everything with, is that every family building journey is different, and we can talk about it as much as we want to make a template, but then when you enter into it, it's just a big mystery and you don't really know what you're gonna get. So yeah, that's it. That's the podcast. Thank you for coming and listening about where to even begin when you ask the question, how do I start my family?
Do you remember the outro?
Oh, do I remember the outro? Yes, I remember the outro.
Thanks for listening, and until next time, Daddy's
Daddy's
out.